Hi, this is JP Newman of Investing on Purpose. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to Ian Balina, the founder of Token Metrics. In 2016, Ian took an investment of $20,000 in crypto and turned it into $5 million. With that $5 million, he now has a dream of turning that into $5 billion to help people around the world. It was the most incredible conversation with Ian that we had today. We covered everything from upcoming DAOs, his forecast of where he sees the world going in the next 10, 20, and 30 years, and a total change and revolution in economies because of the power of crypto and DAOs, and how it'll change the fundamental structures of how we do business. As you know, this show is all about how do you make your money matter, and Ian brings such a unique perspective on structures, strategies, on how you can literally transform your business today by just thinking ahead of the curve. And I just want to remind you as we have these conversations, this is not investment advice or any kind of advice about cryptocurrencies. As you know, these are highly volatile investments that you need to make with a qualified investment planner. We are simply having conversations to create the proper framework of where business strategies are going overall. Hi, this is JP Newman. Welcome to another episode of Investing on Purpose. I am very fortunate to have Ian Balina here today from Token Metrics. I got to meet Ian about a year ago, and I knew from the minute I met you, I just wanted to get to know you better. I just thought your story was so interesting. You've obviously been in this whole world of cryptocurrencies and way before everyone else, and how you got there, I just found it to be incredibly interesting. So as we launched the show, you're one of the first few people I'm like, I would love to interview Ian and even get to know you better. So that was part of the impetus. So I really appreciate you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Well, I want to start, like I said, everyone's talking about stock advice. I know I'm actually an investor in your fund, and it's really exciting. Everyone's talking about crypto and what it might mean, but I kind of wanted to switch it today. Instead of it being about investment, I really want to talk about the promise of cryptocurrency. There's a lot of doubters. There's a lot of people are excited, but let's kind of go back to the roots of the potential promise. And I imagine maybe getting to know more about your story, like what got you in this direction, like what brought you here, and then what do you see the promise being? Maybe I'd like to hear from you.
So for me, I got into crypto back in 2016, and it was really about the promise of a whole new financial system that was more inclusive, where anybody all over the world could be a part of this new future, banking the unbanked, and also building the next evolution of the internet. Because you have lots of other industries from retail to travel and lodging that have been disrupted with Uber, Airbnb. But finance was the last big industry to be disrupted. And Bitcoin and the blockchain and crypto and DeFi has now ushered in this new era of disrupting finance and breaking down borders and boundaries where no central party, no central authority, no central middleman can control who has access and who's included in this new financial system. And to me, that was pretty empowering.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people right now who say that we can't have a system without government control. Government policy is needed for currencies to, if we just go pure blockchain, you have times when you need a central bank to control policy, control interest rates. Otherwise, economies can't function without it. What do you say to that?
I would say that's the old way of looking at financial systems. Now with technology, why not? Why can't that be disrupted? Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto has really showed us that this is possible. Yes, it's still experimental. Yes, there's still some flaws that people are trying to work out. But if you're in the developed world, it's fine. If you're in a third world country, like where I'm from in Uganda, or other parts of the world, like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, as a human being in that country, your wealth, your livelihood, your future is at the hands of dictators, despots, countries where it lacks trust, right? For example, in Russia, right, with Putin. Imagine having built your wealth up in the ruble and then waking up one day, not because of you, because of somebody else, your entire wealth is gone. Yeah. Right? So I say it's safer to have a trustless system, a system that works by itself without having to trust the actors in the middle.
And do you think that economy is like right now, of course, they're trying to raise interest rates, our central banks here in America, because they're trying to slow down inflation. So this idea of having controls and lowering inflation and using interest rates, do economies need that? Or is that just kind of the way we've been doing things? I
would say yes, they do need it on some level. But I come almost from a libertarian philosophy in the sense that the individual should have control in terms of how they partake in that, right? I don't like it when somebody has to force inflation into my own way of living, right? So with crypto, it lets you not be restricted or bound to where you were born in terms of how you build wealth, how you save, and how you become part of the global financial system, right? Crypto makes you pretty much borderless because now you can pick up and leave and go to a different ecosystem, right? And I think that's power. That's empowering.
But it takes power away from governments. And so the question is, the governments are going to fight, which they have been. Like China's been fighting it. Obviously, the U.S. is fighting it. They're so used to be able to print money to manipulate economies, for better or worse, that will large governments allow that like really to happen, or they block it?
I don't think so. But at the end of the day, the whole ethos of crypto is you can't, once it launches, you can't just shut crypto down. You can't shut down Bitcoin. It's 24/7. Right? So unless they want to hinder innovation and growth in their countries, eventually they'll have to play ball. And I view everything as competition. And I think competition is healthy. It makes governments not have to really be accountable because now their people can go elsewhere in a digital world, whether through crypto assets or what have you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Being born in Uganda, I don't know how many years you lived there. I imagine I've traveled quite a bit. I've been very fortunate. I've been to a lot of countries, first world, second world, third world countries. And you definitely see how, as Michael Saylor says, how money can leak. The storage leaks in most of these countries because their currencies can get so devalued. So you can never win. You're almost enslaved to the extent that you're earning low wages. And by the time you save any money you save, it's being devalued. So it becomes this vicious circle of poverty.
It's hard to escape.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I was born there. I left in 97. I was there for about 6-7 years. Came here to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. Went back for the first time in over 20 years, back in 2018 for the first time. And yeah, I mean, when you're born there, it's very hard to break the cycle, to escape. And I think with Web3, with crypto, it's really providing a new avenue for people to really escape I would say the chains that hold them back, right? Whether it's their presidents, whether it's a dictatorship, whether it's anything else out there, but it's creating something that's more open and inclusive. Because now you can be somebody in Uganda and still partake in the next wave of the financial system, yes, which is very hard to kind of fathom because like even on my crypto world tour, back in 2018, we did 35 countries in 12 months. Went everywhere, to Africa, went to Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Egypt, the Middle East, Asia, and really seeing how people were being affected by their local economies, yeah, and how they're looking to crypto as a way out, right? So, for example, somebody in Beirut, how basically there's a bank run and they can't withdraw funds out of the ATM. What do you do if your entire wealth is now crashing, right? How do you hedge away that risk, right? So people are looking for crypto, not just to make money or gamble on building wealth per se, but more on hedging away the risk of a central entity dictating their future.
Right. Right. Let me ask you, I know yesterday there was a scathing article in the New York Times about the failure, as obviously, El Salvador, was it San Salvador or El Salvador that adopted Bitcoin as
El Salvador.
El Salvador. And there was a scathing kind of a hater on crypto who was just basically saying, look at El Salvador, the Bitcoin experiment really isn't working because these cryptos are so early and so volatile, it can't stabilize. It's not, by its nature of its volatility, it can't become a stable currency to meet this promise. What would you say to that? Is it just too early?
I would say it's too early. It takes time. I mean, take the US dollar. It took hundreds of years to stabilize, right? To become what it is now as a global reserve currency. But for me, it's much bigger than that, because if you take El Salvador, recently they had this gathering of other central banks around the world from 44 countries in El Salvador to study what they're doing with Bitcoin and how that's helping developing countries basically escape the restrictions they have from the IMF and other global entities kind of holding them down. Yes. Right? So the fact that 44 other countries are looking at El Salvador as a lesson tells me that this is a global movement. This is not, yes, it's very early, but there are lots of people watching to see how this fares. because they're interested to see how this can fix their current weaknesses in their own economies locally.
Makes sense. So let me ask you from the obviously you got in very early. 2016, you said you got into crypto, which is super early. You had a really cool story. I think if I remember, did you work for Deloitte Touche?
Yeah, Deloitte, IBM.
And it was interesting because now you've launched a large fund and you've gone into crypto, but you actually started out from what I understand, at IBM Watson, you were a technical engineer and a sales engineer, which is super cool to have like those technical skills. And I think at Deloitte, weren't you more on the IT consulting side? So it's very interesting. I'd love to hear more about just your background, because it seems to me you have a very technical background as well as a entrepreneur, which you don't usually see in the same left brain, right brain. Can you hear more about that?
Ever since I was a kid, I've always been into technology and computers. Learned how to program when I was in 5th grade with QBasic, then began building my own video games. Then went to college at GW in DC, undergrad and grad school, majored in computer engineering. Went to Deloitte as IT consultant, then IBM. And I just love technology, but I also love business and being an entrepreneur. Yeah. Also from a very early age. So I knew all the way back in 7th grade, I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur.
That is amazing that you knew that.
Because I was basically watching the whole .com era, reading all these magazines on Michael Dell, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and just seeing how this back then Web 2 and the internet was being built from the ground up. And I was just so excited about it. And I knew back then that this was a world I wanted to be in. Yeah. Right? And now here I am.
That's amazing. Because 2016 was pretty early. What do you think? I mean, you had a good job, obviously, very prestigious job working for IBM and doing amazing things. What happened in 2016? What was the shift in your thought? You're like, it's time to jump in. And how did you jump in? What was your
I was working at IBM. A friend of mine from my DC college days reached out to me, wanted me to put him in touch with the IBM director of blockchain. And I asked him, this guy's pretty high up there. What do you want to talk to him? Right? Kind of give me more. He told me he was launching a crypto hedge fund to invest and trade in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And back then, it just baffled the mind because I was aware of Bitcoin, but I only knew about it in a negative context of Silk Road, the dark web. So I didn't know, one, you could even invest in it as an investable asset, and two, you could launch a hedge fund for it. So basically, I just kind of picked his brain that whole week. That same week, I ended up buying Bitcoin and Ethereum. This was in the fall. Ethereum was around $8. Bitcoin was around $800 or so. And went down a rabbit hole. 1 year later, quit my job to go full-time in crypto as an angel investor. Because once I find something that's very exciting to me, I become very obsessed with it. 24/7, I was just reading and investing in crypto because it was kind of like finding the internet for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
So,
what do you think the excitement was? Do you think it was the idea of like a revolution in the whole financial system? Did you make the parallel? Was it about this like diversity, inclusivity as far as changing the world system? Was it like what do you think about it that drove you down that rabbit hole?
I would say all the above. So I saw it as the next internet.
Yeah.
And having witnessed the .com era in the late 90s, even though I was very young, and I saw the same thing happening, but now for the first time, anybody could partake in it and also invest in it. Mm-hmm. Because back then you had to really be a VC to invest in it, but now it was decentralized. Anybody could partake in token sales or just buy Bitcoin or Ethereum on the ground floor. Right. So it was very democratic in that aspect. And once I saw it, I just knew I had to be involved.
Yeah, incredible. And so, what did you do? You tell me more. So you leave. You start angel investing, and then
So actually, prior to that, I began just dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and people kind of know me publicly for turning about 20 grand into 5 million, in pretty much 1 year, from having this data-driven approach to investing. Because I was working at IBM Watson Analytics, and I was a data guy. So I took all the data out there I could find on token sales for crypto and built a spreadsheet to basically crunch what token sales I thought would do well. Think of this as the money ball for investing in crypto assets. And this basically, because back then it was the wild, wild west. People didn't really have a strategy to invest, especially retail.
By the way, you're very uniquely qualified to do this. If you think about it, you had your technical skills from IBM. So you had like technical skills to actually look at these coins and like dissect what was real and what was not real. And then you had your investment and your team skills and your analytical skills on the sales side to really, which I thought was really interesting when I met you, that you really could look at it both like the underlying code, is it valid code? And then the business thesis at the same time. Does the business thesis make sense, and matching them up, which I think is really unique.
So it was kind of it was a great fit for me in that aspect, and helped me do pretty well. But for me, it wasn't just about doing well. It was about documenting the process, because really I would just live stream of myself researching those cryptocurrencies via a YouTube channel. This shows would go on for up to 2 or 3 hours, unedited. And people loved the process of me just documenting the process of researching crypto assets to invest in. And then from there, after some success, went on the world tour just to see how other people were using crypto around the world. So we had different meetups, conferences.
Right. And you were documenting this all on YouTube, if I remember.
Yeah,
and I think,
all on YouTube.
Didn't you get quite a bit of a large following from your little...
Yeah.
How big did your following get?
It got over 100,000 on YouTube. All from just researching how to invest in crypto.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But so it's cool. We use that to kind of go meet our audience globally, right? 35 countries in 12 months. And really seeing boots on the ground, how people were using crypto, and hearing the stories live in person over coffee or at a conference. That then helped me found what is now Tokenmetrics, because people wanted a data-driven way to invest in crypto assets. And I saw the spreadsheet being the MVP of that. And having worked at IBM Watson, I saw the power of AI and machine learning. And I said, what if we brought that to crypto? And that's where Tokenmetrics was born.
Wow. Incredible. That is just amazing. And so I know until recently, you were really, Tokenmetrics was really on the analytics side. And then finally you launched a fund. I think, when did you officially launch the fund? It was like 6 months ago or a year ago?
Last quarter. Actually, yeah, we officially launched it about 3 months ago, Tokenmetrics Ventures.
Which is just incredible. Like I said, I know crypto. When I started from the day I met you, I knew there always would be volatility. And the way I always look at my crypto investments is I don't look at it was a bad week or a good week. I don't say, God, my crypto portfolio is worth X. I just look at, kind of like you, I'm looking at the long term and the fundamentals, and knowing that, we're not going to pick everything right. But if you believe kind of in the power, and I do very much agree with you, I kind of see this as a financial revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because having been in this space since 2016, we've been through lots of ups and downs. Yeah. And as investors, the value comes in the bear market, right? Our best investments, Matic Network and Polygon, Helium Network, all these came in the bear market. Yeah. And in the bear market, basically, people are panicked sellers. So you have the best discounts. You have steep discounts on value investments that will have value long term.
I want to ask you, so a lot of what I talk about on my show is really how do we kind of take what we're at right now with technology, and again, even beyond crypto, you look at crowdfunding, all those technology from crypto, NFTs, crowdsourcing, different ways of creating money as opposed to like traditional VCs. And how do we create more sustainable businesses? So you're basically having your for purpose and your for profit, or the double bottom line, more easily baked in. Because again, the thought is, if you're not with a VC firm and you're not giving away 40% of your company day one, or you're not taking a certain amount of money that maybe immediately takes the vision or the mission, just to maximize shareholder value, what else could it look like? And I'm really a big believer that, and I don't exactly, I talk about some ideas of what it might look like, but it seems like we could create more sustainable, more profitable companies that kind of like, beyond social impact, it's almost like it's just baked in. The sustainability is baked into the profit.
Yeah,
would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that's the beauty of cryptocurrencies and the whole ecosystem, because we can now create incentives to incentivize any actor, whether the developers, the investors, or the community, to act in the manner we would like them to act, right? So it's basically bringing together economics, game theory, and investing and technology and the internet all into one, right? So for example, if we want to create an organization that will have people go out there and help with the rainforest, we can do that. If we want to build an organization to go out there and invest, we can do that, right? And that's why I think DAOs, these centralized autonomous organizations, will be one of the biggest innovations in crypto.
Can you tell more about that? Because I bet on the Climb-On. That didn't work out too good for me on this first one, which was this idea of a carbon marketplace. And of course, someone will do it. But can you talk a little more about maybe a DAO or maybe?
Yeah, so a DAO is, think of it as a online company, or almost like an online LLC, except it's owned by all the members. And all the members typically would have, usually equal share or will have different ownership structures based on how much they own, right? So let's say I want to create a DAO to go out there and buy a basketball team, for example. There's actually a DAO doing that, right?
Is that right?
Yeah, it's called Krauser DAO, I believe. So investors pull their money together, in this case, Ether, together, and then they then have voting stake based on the ownership stake. So let's say they have $10 million, right? And let's say I have $100,000 in that, right? I'll own 1% of that, right? That then lets me vote on what the DAO does as a whole, right? And now everything is on.
And you're
chain.
holding this as a token, as basically
as a
a token, right?
Right, but now all this is on chain, so there's governance involved. So similar to how a board for a company would have voting on what to do with the shareholders, in this case, it's all being tokenized and done on the blockchain.
So you're saying early on, I think what you're saying, this excites me too. You're saying that like the founder or visionary, if the community agrees with the vision, whether it's this, I don't know, with this basketball team or sustainability or whatever, they can bake that in very early into the rules. So it's almost like the investors know, and this is baked into the basically the foundation early on, so it doesn't get stripped away later on. Is that kind of the thought behind
correct,
it?
right? So you can have governance for everything, for any action that the DAO takes, or even control of the DAO treasury. Any funds, they're all covered on the blockchain. So there's a track record and a ledger of every action the DAO takes. And I think that's pretty powerful. So DAOs are being used to do lots of things, right? Whether buying a basketball team, whether to help with charities. There was a DAO recently for the Ukraine-Russia war, for example, right? To help people who were basically had to move and become and basically leave the country. Right? So a DAO can be used for anything. Think of it as an online community treasury or LLC owned by the community itself. There's no central actor.
Now, with in a for-profit example, maybe you can give me an example. I was saying, like, if Uber was a DAO, if there was a ride sharing today, I imagine you still need in that community. And I actually had a recent conversation with John Mackey about this, the CEO of Whole Foods. You still take some management to steer. It seems like you know this idea of that it's a community. Do you agree that, like, especially if it's an Uber or whatever new version, you still need a community, but you still probably need corporate. Do you still need a C-level suite? Do you still need a vice president of sales? Do you still need to drive strategy? Because it seems like you still need to steer the boat, right?
Early on, yes, you need some early supporters. Best example is Helium Network. They're building a decentralized internet. They're competing against your typical AT&T, Verizon, Google Fiber, and they're doing this by anybody can purchase a hardware device that looks like a router. You plug it in at home to your Wi-Fi. You share your internet connection, and it pays you in cryptocurrencies, right? So, for example, they have partnerships with Lime scooters, so the scooters have to go online, and they can connect to your hotspot, and they pay you in crypto. So early on, Helium Network, the company behind it, was the early supporter. But after about 3 years or so, they've now made it open source and made it owned by the community as a whole. And now it's turned into basically a foundation that is modeled after open source projects, kind of like Red Hat, Linux, where they're just part of the network and community helping spread the word and helping provide services and products. But now it's owned by the community. The hardware designs are completely open source. Other manufacturers can now get the designs and create them themselves. So now they have almost, I believe, over 500,000 hotspots globally.
It's amazing. So are there any paid employees, would you say, in this organization? Does it still take paid employees at this point, even though it's a community, to kind of run it, or
so
not?
Helium now, so now there's the Helium Foundation, I believe, or some other name, that helps usher along the growth of the network. But now there's governance where the community as a whole votes. They have what they call HIP, Helium Improvement Proposals, where the community helps votes and governs what they do next. Okay. And then there's also a foundation board. This is called the Decentralized, I think, Wireless Alliance, where they're nominated by the community and they can help steer or provide input or do anything that might need a board to be done. But governance is still done by the community as a whole.
So that's
lots
incredible.
of models like this in the crypto
and
ecosystem.
So the tokens, I imagine, was it an unlimited with the date? Was it issued like a finite amount of tokens so the tokens continue to have value? Like who manages?
So they actually have a very interesting model. It's basically called the mint and burn equilibrium, So they mint and burn tokens based on the usage of the network.
Okay.
Right?
Can you just go a little more? I don't know how that works. So, can you tell
So
me more how
kind
that
of like
works?
kind of like think like the money supply, right? You have the Federal Reserve Bank. They can print money. They can decrease money, right? To kind of control it. So with Helium Network, it's the same thing. So to balance the supply and demand, they can print more tokens or more cryptocurrencies to control supply and demand, or they can burn them. And so let's say somebody wants, like Lime Scooters, they buy the tokens directly from the platform. They use it to go online, and then that token is burnt.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this is used to control the rate at which Helium basically just kind of grows as a.
And by burning tokens, you don't create the same problems that you create with government currencies, where you just keep printing money until you deflate it. So this kind of controls the deflation of the
This
currency.
is completely automated, right? There's no central authority that kind of can just stop or just keep on printing, right? It's designed to be self-sufficient, where it will stabilize.
Are there any other DAOs that you're seeing right now that you like, whether they're successful now, or you really think in a year or two, like they are going to make a big imprint for the better of humanity? Are you seeing other things? Like, again, I know people have been tackling the carbon footprint, or the carbon footprint marketplace. I don't know if anyone's won that space.
Yeah, this carbon footprint. Yeah, I don't think anybody has, to my knowledge, really taken a leap ahead of that. I think right now we're still in the stage where the infrastructure is being developed. Right, so projects I like are CeeLo. They're basically building a platform that lets other developers build DeFi applications or applications for currency, especially in the developing world.
Interesting. I can tell me more about that. I don't know about this.
Yeah, so think of this as a blockchain similar to Ethereum.
Okay.
Some could say even kind of like Luna with the whole crisis.
Right.
Except
we got to say Luna carefully now.
But basically, let's say I want to create a mobile application for currency in East Africa, kind of like M-Pesa. Right? You can try to build that on the Ethereum blockchain, but it has its limitations and restrictions. So Celo blockchain is an EVM compatible blockchain, meaning that you can port Ethereum applications over to it and it will support them fully, but it's being designed from the ground up with a particular audience in mind. People who want to create money applications, right? Like your PayPal, your Venmo, currency applications to support banking the unbanked.
Interesting. Incredible. And has it actually launched now at this point?
Yeah, so it's launched. It's been out for a few years now. It has great backing. I believe investors like A16Z and others. So it's a pretty notable project, especially when it comes to banking the unbanked.
So Ian, a lot of people in the audience, these are entrepreneurs. They either have businesses, they're starting business, or trying to think around, I always say thinking around the curve, which I try to do here with my commercial real estate. From what you're seeing, if you were to give advice to maybe, people in the audience that are looking at businesses around sustainability, success, where were you to guess, like, what advice would you give over like the next 3 to 5 years of things that people should be thinking about in building businesses with all this that's coming up? What do you see?
I would say look to build things at scale, because technology is constantly disrupting, and the rate at which it disrupts is growing exponentially. And almost every industry is susceptible to getting disrupted. Because if it's happening now in banking and finance, and you have banks basically scared because these DeFi applications are taking their lunch, right? As an entrepreneur, where do you have the founder fit in terms of your particular skill sets to have the right leverage to impact the most people at scale? Right? So we mentioned how my background was in engineering, analytics, and AI, and once I found crypto, it was natural for me to kind of apply this and build token metrics. Right? So I would say look at your own skill sets, your strengths, and see where you can have the most leverage and impact at scale.
That's great. And then what about, there's a lot of pessimists about humanity and where we're going, that, the AI is going to take over and all this technology, or we're all going to become, I finally just got my Quest Oculus goggles and I'm having so much fun. But, the idea that we're going to get lost in the metaverse and all that stuff. How do you, and this is a bigger philosophical question, how do you see businesses being a change for good? Like, or do you just see businesses being a change for good under these new systems? And if so, how do you see that?
Well, contention people might have with AI taking their jobs per se, but I think that's great because now it allows humans to focus on whatever they want. I think it builds a better world. It's not that humans will become extinct per se, right? Because innovation and disruption has been happening since the beginning of time. We've just found other ways to be productive with our time and our resources, right? Whether that means us going to Mars and doing something there, who knows, right?
Yes. I've been to Mars and Africa this week on my quest goggle. It was pretty good. And I saw the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it will be challenging for those who maybe become complacent and don't keep on trying to learn and grow. But I think humanity as a whole will progress forward.
Yeah, I think so too. I tend to think the same thing. And the hope is, and I guess I'll throw this last question at you because no one knows, but it's like the dream of a Star Trek universe where money almost becomes like it's abundant, just the way Peter Diamandis says that energy is going to be abundant in the next 20 or 30 years. Yeah. Obviously, humanity has spent a lot of its life in scarcity. You know, it was dog eat dog, Darwinian. And so this idea of, humanity spending thousands of years where there's been many people at the bottom for a few people to be at the top. If you were to put a timing, because I know this is just the very beginning of this financial revolution that we're calling Web3 and it's going to evolve. But if you were just to put your best guess 5, 10, 20 years from now, like how different do you think things could be? And what would you think it might look like?
Oh, wow.
That's a tough one.
I think it will definitely be a whole new world. I think it'll be a more fair, just world. I think it will take some time. I think it might take all the way until 2050, let's say 30 years or more or longer, right? But looking at how far technology has come in the last 30 years, right? Like now you have the power of a computer in your hand with a phone, right? So imagine where that will be 30 years in the future, right? So whether it's the Oculus, whether it's not us on different planets. So I still think there'll always be issues. I think one of my favorite philosophers, Nietzsche, says to live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering, right? So suffering is part of the human condition. But once you find meaning and purpose, then you can survive any suffering. You realize why it's worth it, right? Basically the why, right? So I think to say that there will never be suffering, I mean, maybe in the metaverse, but in the actual world, there will always be just different things happening with people who don't agree with each other. But at scale as a whole, I think will evolve all of humanity, right? People will have better standards of living. People will have better access to resources to just live and just have a better life.
That's amazing. Okay, last question for you. If you were to predict in the next 5 or 10 years, because I know you're looking constantly at where to invest, what industries do you think with crypto and with this new DeFi, what do you think will be the earliest industries that will get disrupted that you see? Like in real estate, I think title companies and escrow companies, that's an obvious blockchain replacement. The industry will push, like the tobacco industry, they're going to push as long as they can, but it's obvious to me that title and escrow, which is a really slow and expensive part of real estate transactions, could easily technologically be replaced. What other areas or industries or businesses
so
do you
the
think
first one would be banking and finance. So investing, lending, saving. Then I would say the arts, music, especially when it comes to NFTs, right? So you have arts, collectibles, music, even content, and basically how you pay royalties to artists, for examples, and basically all of Hollywood. Wall Street and Hollywood will be disrupted, I believe.
Interesting.
Right?
So how do you think like actors will get paid per stream? Like how do you think it'll change?
It'll just be a much more fairer way of getting paid. So whether actors, whether artists from Spotify, right? So imagine Spotify as a DAO, right? Where artists, let's say there's this foundational board that can help steer it, but artists now can actually get paid at a better rate. They can set their own payment fee, right? So for example, with NFTs, it's really been very disruptive because now artists can get paid royalties in the future if there's if their artwork is ever resold, right? For example, like with Bored Apes or anything like that, they can charge 5 or 10%. So, because now every time there's a transaction, right? So somebody could create art that sells for $1,000 now, but 2 years down the road sells for $1 million. They're still earning royalties from that.
Right. Which we don't do now at all. You get paid once, and that's why you can die a starving artist and you never see your money.
Well, how many times have you heard of Hollywood actors fighting with the studios based on their contract?
When I worked for Sony, there was a term called adjusted gross. It wasn't net, it was adjusted gross, which basically means the studio decides what you get paid.
Yeah, so that being on chain, that would totally, I think, be disrupted.
So Ian, what is your goal for Token Metrics? Obviously, this is an exciting new launch you just did with the fund. What's your goal with it?
So my goal for Token Metrics is to create a platform that lets crypto investors become smart investors. We're working on building the world's smartest AI for crypto. So imagine, like, if you've seen the show Westworld, there's this AI called Rehoboam that basically it's basically all seeing, all encompassing, takes data from all over the world, and then initially begins trading and making money in the stock market, but then begins kind of taking over the world. So we're not trying to take over the world per se, but we are trying to take over the crypto markets to allow humans to then passively invest in crypto. So imagine if you had an AI that could look at the market data, sentiment data, on-chain data, as many data points as possible, and help you find the insights automatically. So we want to automate the process of finding the needle in the haystack.
I mean, I know a lot of stock companies like Renaissance, there's all these classic companies. I think it's only one or two that have successfully created the secret formula to look at stocks. Is this different than kind of what I know for 20 years it's been like similar, the magic sword of that, right?
Except we would want to make it available to retail investors, right? And anybody who can go to our platform, right? Because those companies, they kind of keep it in-house, right? But for us, we want to make it more inclusive.
Interesting. Is that why you're kind of keeping this model of you can invest in the fund, or you can just subscribe to your services and kind of get advice?
Yeah, right? Because the fund actually came from the success of our platform. Our customers who were on the platform and wanted a very passive way to invest said, hey, why don't you guys just take our money, right? Because basically we had done pretty well, right? In the last few years with the platform, people like Brian, who came to us and said,
mutual friend Brian,
I said, hey, why don't you guys do a fund?
Right.
Right.
Makes sense. Are we there, by the way, with AI? Because for years I've been pitched ideas of the magical computer formula that can actually take all these elements and get really accurate at predicting. Do you feel like we're there now, or do you feel like we're getting there?
We're getting there, not quite there yet. But the beauty of crypto is it's all data. Like, it's taking data that was typically behind closed doors and building an open financial system. So imagine if we had AI actually studying this data to find insights. That's what we're building at.
So do you think it's easier to study, like to predict with crypto exchanges versus like stocks, because stocks like have more other elements that are not just all digital?
I'll tell you why it's easier. First of all, crypto's really the only free market out there in crypto. Right? I mean, in financial systems, right? 24/7. There's no human manipulation. Yeah, no human intervention.
Right.
So it's a fully free market. So if we can take all this data in a free market and then study it, right? There's no SEC coming in to halt trading, right? It's a real free capitalist market, and all this data is publicly available, and we can go out there and use it on the blockchain. Right. And we know the history and the ledger and the truth of it and its history.
So the last question for you is, obviously, what you're doing is incredible. And it sounds like you're really going to be part of this mission of really changing finance for hopefully a lot of people. What's your dream or vision or legacy for Token Metrics and for yourself? Like, I guess, what's your personal why for building this? What would it look like? And then
my personal why is one, twofold, is to make as much money as possible from crypto and investing, and then to use it to reinvest back into Africa, where I'm from, in Uganda, and help other entrepreneurs learn and build other businesses. So in a way, I want to give back all my wealth and help turn Uganda and other developing countries into a more developed world.
Amazing. How would you do that? Like, would you have like schools, like trading schools?
Yeah, so I would have entrepreneur schools, business schools, because the system where I'm from is very corrupt, and I know it still will take lots of capital infusion from people who aren't just the government to help really anybody out there who has the dream or the hope of being an entrepreneur or building a business or just changing the country and the world. Right? So I want to help fund that.
Very amazing. Sounds okay. Okay, so your audacious goal would be you're there. Let's say it's 5 or 10 years in the future, and there's a check in your hand, and you did it, and you're about to start your efforts in Africa. How big is the check? What's the check say on it?
5 billion.
I love it. I love it.
As much as possible. Because imagine if we've created like better colleges and universities throughout Uganda and all of Africa, right? How would that impact everybody there? Because there's students out there who are smart, but they lack schools, right? So how do we change that? And I think the beauty of it is if you can create wealth and then give it away in a manner that brings purpose to whatever you would like to do, I think that's the beauty in crypto. And that's what motivates me to be in crypto and to make money in crypto, because now I can help give it away.
I think it's just incredible. And I'll just end on this. As you know, when we first met, I met 2 boys 5 years ago in an orphanage in Binwandi, which is up in the mountains of Uganda. And it was a 15-minute meeting that's now turned into a 5-year relationship where I'm now Papa JP. And there's a lot of responsibility being Papa JP. Christmas gifts, I get to see their family, I get to see what's going on. And I'm just going to say, as you're talking about your dream, it really means a lot to me, because I've realized through this relationship, which I didn't expect a 15-minute encounter in my life while I was traveling to turn into now a 5-year relationship where they text me 5-6 times a week and we're doing video chats and they know my children and I know their dreams. And in a lot of ways, as much as I'm helping them, I'm really just this much, because like so many of their dreams, the government and the structure makes it really, really hard for them to achieve. And it's frustrating because it's like, as much as I want to give, I know that the system that they're in right now is so difficult to rise above. These are smart, motivated people that just want a chance. So I just want to thank you for that vision, because I feel it from my heart, and I can kind of feel firsthand that there's a lot of smart, incredible people out there that all they need is infrastructure and a chance to succeed, a real chance that's not stacked against them. And I can see how the power of crypto could really be a block of liberation. So thank you for that.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I mean,
Cool.
that's quite a story as well.
Yeah. Well, you're going to meet them soon. I'm going to show you pictures.
Yeah, I would love to.
And I am so grateful for this time with you. And it's really fun. You're expanding my mind and my thoughts, because I have like 100 questions. And I know we're all in this experiment together, but I just really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Great to be here.
To be continued. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.